Welcome back to Aquarian Anarchy. My name is Marcus Pulis, and you will see on your screen Chad Lemoyne and Nicco, and my good friend G.I. Mary Jane Joie Leigh, who is our guest for this evening. As many of you know, Aquarian Anarchy has been focused on solutions to the problem of the state for some time. And we have decided to introduce you to people that have solutions. We've talked to Adam Kokesh about his plans and his ideas, and last week we talked to my friend Tad Griffin about homeless outreach and helping homeless without government. And this week we're going to start talking about cannabis. And Joie, also better known as G.I. Mary Jane, is a cannabis activist who, and I'll let her give her full resume if she wants in a moment, but her and I met while she was working with the Team Freedom, or the campaign for Adam Kokesh to become not president of the United States. And we became friends, and she was on my short list to talk to y'all when we started talking about guests, because cannabis can lead to an awful lot of people waking up to other forms of freedom and other thoughts. So I think that I will go ahead and let Joie introduce herself and kind of tell you a little bit about herself, and then Chad, Nicco, and I will dive in and start asking questions. So Joie, take it away.
Thank you so much, Marcus. I really appreciate you. I am, like you said, G.I. Mary Jane, the Commander-in-Chief for Platoon 420, an independent media site that reports the drug war news from the perspective of the victims. We don't believe it's a raid. We believe it's a home invasion, and it needs to stop. Also a recipient of the Architect of the Capitol Award for 2018 for my activism efforts. Worked with NORML, have lobbied on the national and the state level, and this year a delegate to the Libertarian National Committee. Over my years, I found that the Libertarian Party is the only one that even wants to address the whole prohibition issue. And after years of full-time activism, here I am talking on behalf of the people that I've been serving to finally try to find a pathway to freedom for them. This has been going on at least my whole lifetime. So thanks again for having me on.
No problem. So I agree with you that as parties go, the Libertarian Party is certainly the most cannabis friendly. If you go to any libertarian thing, somebody's smoking weed somewhere. If you don't smell it, yeah, right.
I'm almost certain. Now, y'all weren't there, but I was in Orlando, and I've never smoked before. I'll just put that out there. But I'm certain that I got like secondhand high big time just by walking in the breezeway between buildings, because it was
That's
on.
Good stuff, like right there.
Right. Yeah. So how do you, Joie, how do you plan on expanding your involvement with the party, or at least in general libertarian circles, to try to get cannabis legalized nationally or decriminalized? I know that it's better to say in prohibition, but how do you, what's your goals, and how do you think that you will move forward with that?
It's interesting you ask that, actually. I've been talking with a few people that are also with the party, and we're discussing the reality of making a cannabis caucus. And I've said it before in a room full of libertarians. They're like, we don't need a cannabis caucus. Everybody wants to legalize. Well, but they don't. When you talk to people, you've got this crowd of libertarians that want to regulate cannabis like alcohol, making it so you can still get a DUI, you can't grow, and then you have the camp that I would associate with that sees cannabis as a produce, and it should not be any more or less regulated than the current regulatory system is on whatever produce we talk about: lavender, lettuce, tomatoes. I don't care what it is. And I think that really needs to be defined within the LP. Of course, since its foundation, you know, the right to choose what you put in your body has been a thing, but it's not really been discussed and expanded upon. So right now, actually, once we're done here, I'm going to hop on the phone with a couple of people and talk about maybe moving forward with that. And then also trying to just expand that outreach. Everybody thinks that it's not that big of a deal. Oh, you guys just want to get high. You want to, I don't care what your reasoning is. There are people, over 40% of our prison population right now, that are sitting there because they had a substance on them. What percentage of that is cannabis? I don't know off the top of my head, but it's too high. We need to let these people be productive members of our society again. And until we end prohibition completely, it's not going to happen. Outreach is very important. Cannabis is one of those things that crosses all cultural, religion, you know, everybody around the world. In every demographic, you have a portion, usually a high portion, of the population using cannabis. We have an endocannabinoid system. It's something our bodies need. So yeah, there needs to be more outcry. I actually just recently shared a petition that NORML initiated. NORML is the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, far from legalization. And the poll was, or I'm sorry, the petition was to plea with Biden and Trump to change their minds on cannabis. My mind kind of like, you know, short-circuited when I read this. Because we have a candidate that we don't have to petition any candidate within the Libertarian Party to do something about this. What that looks like, you know, remains to be seen. But having worked with NORML in the past, I sent out an email, haven't gotten a response, but it's very frustrating. All of the cannabis organizations are very politically leaning. And I think it's important because cannabis is not a political issue, only through the regulatory side, but it's not a political issue outside of regulation. I think it's important to keep politics, even LP politics, out of the outreach. So I was offered a position recently. I haven't made it, I guess I'm making it public now, as chair of the planning committee for the annual Washington, D.C. smoke-in, which is held at high noon on July 4th every year. Back in 1970, a civil disobedience permit was pulled out for 50 years. That's why nobody gets arrested when they're smoking on the National Mall. And that permit needs to roll over. And
yeah, it just expired. So you're taking that over?
Yep, it has been put in my capable hands. So I'm trying to build a team. And my goal moving forward for the next 5-year commitment I've made with these folks is to eliminate the politics and just focus on the outreach and make sure that we have a crowd on July 4th full of Republicans and Democrats and Green parties and liberals and people who just don't want to get involved in politics whatsoever. I want to make sure that we can get representatives out to this event. I want to turn it into something that's, you know, instead of just being a greeting of wonderful people who all share the same interests, which is totally beneficial, we need to get the representatives in on this. And that's what I hope to do with these events moving forward. So that's where I'm at.
How do you plan on like marketing this? How is it marketed other than like your social medias and I mean via face to face? Like do you have like people like not marketing, but like a network of people that just say, hey, we're doing this, or how's your plan on to basically get this global and more presented to people?
That's the big thing is the planning team that's in place right now. They're a group of, you know, very dedicated veteran activists that they're not media savvy. They're not marketing savvy. And I feel like that's the only thing that's missing. How do I plan to do it? I plan on building a team that knows how to do it because I'm no marketing strategist. What I can tell you is somebody on the team who is passing the torch was the artist for all the Cannabis Cup circulars. So hopefully with his artistic input and the input of some new team members that know how to really blast this, we can make it happen. There's also a planning team being built in Los Angeles. We want to have multi-city events if we can make it happen, of course, and that may be evolving over time. That's where we're at. We need to get that. I'm glad you asked that because this event over a span of 50 years has not had that. And that's exactly what we need right now.
Have you thought about have you thought about reaching out to Bill Levin and seeing if he might be able to help too? Because he's got pretty good name recognition and lots of people know who he is within the community, and he's pretty accessible. Have you thought about reaching out to him as well?
Yeah, absolutely. He's on the short list along with a lot of other actionable activists that I know across the country. And these guys have a little black book full of people that have been helping them over the past 50 years. They have a list of donors that love to help make this festival, great. And I'm looking forward to, with the help of the community that I've grown so close to, nationwide, to really blow this up and, make it that Cannabis Cup event, but on the National Mall every year, demanding our freedom until something happens.
And that's just it. We've got to, because I'm an anarchist, and like my t-shirt says, I'm a libertarian leaning anarchist, but I'm an anarchist. I don't believe in government. I believe that, and when I say government, I don't mean voluntary government. I mean the coercive force that is the greatest evil that has ever seen this planet has ever seen. But we've got to take initiative to try to get things done. Trying to make it non-political to me seems the not only the pragmatic way to do it, it also seems like just the plain smart way to do it, because you pull in people and agree to disagree on economics, agree to disagree on all of these different things, so that you can focus down on giving back to the people the right, because it is a right. And I'm not talking about a right given by some document or some bullshit. I'm talking about the right of every human being to what we put in our body. If I want to kill myself, it is my right to kill myself. Beyond what drugs I want to use, if I want to end my life, that is my right to do so. Now, a lot of people aren't going to like that. We got to protect people and blah, 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 blah. You're wasting resources fighting something that somebody else wants to do. One. Number two, when you take the politics out of it and you just push forward with, let's get cannabis, however we can get it decriminalized, however we can get it reduced. I don't care if it's just a little bit, every little piece matters. If we can get everybody together and do that, then people like us, people who are freedom-minded, will start seeing people flooding our way, whether or not they started as libertarians or freedom-oriented people, because pot opens your mind. It makes you see through shit, and once you get a little bit of freedom, then you're going to want a little bit more, and you're going to start seeing how you can change the world by action, because I think that's more effective personally than politics. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, with my past, I've been involved in politics, but to me, it's about direct action. It's about going out and saying peacefully, I'm not putting up with this shit anymore.
No, it's too much. There's stories. I don't know the gentleman's name. I just saw the story today, but I covered a similar story back in November. 62-year-old man was put away for growing cannabis in Michigan. And this one actually was laid out by a jury of his peers. He argued it all the way up, to that trial level. And they gave him a 20-year sentence. So he was ripped off of the plant that he was growing to treat his chronic condition. He died 4 months after being in prison. Something just recently, I think it was in Ohio that it happened today. A couple in Ohio, thank God, was just put on probation yesterday. They had trial, same thing. They were both facing 20 years. Little old lady in a wheelchair, guy on an oxygen mask, never hurt anybody. And in this case, they were growing. They got busted, but before they could get to court, the law changed and they were allowed to grow. Okay. They are both on a 5-year probation now. So to say that they got off is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
If they end up in a room with a felon and don't know it, they can go back to jail. I mean, we all know how probation works. It's kind of a trap.
It's a leash.
So
well, and meanwhile, not to harp on this issue too much, but Amber Geiger is on a 10-year sentence that'll probably end up not being fully served for shooting a guy dead in his own apartment because she thought she was in hers.
And he had weed.
It's like,
Yeah, she was a cop, right?
Yeah, she's a cop.
Well, that's why she's above the law, silly.
Yeah, well, and that's also why they went and tried to find out if Botham Jean had any drugs in his apartment too. They were like, well, let's see if maybe there's a reason. Like, she's in the wrong fucking apartment, and she just shot the dude for no fucking reason. I don't give a shit if he has a nuclear missile in his fucking apartment. It doesn't have a goddamn thing to do with what happened.
Right. Yeah, and you know, I hesitate to say this because I hate to give props to a piece of shit, to a turd rolled in pig vomit. But one thing that Nick Sarwark did say, I think it was in his debate with, Joey, you'll find out. I don't give a damn. It's not Nick Sarwark. I don't like the name. So anyway, one thing he said in his debate with, it was either the debate or the interview, I can't remember, with Dave Smith, is that if we could get rid of the drug war, then the excuse for the state to come into our lives, half of it goes the fuck away. So
we have a global police brutality problem right now. Like, riots are popping up all over the place.
Yep.
I'm excited about it because people are finally stepping up. Nobody likes violence. It's going to be ugly, but the end result's going to be great. Now, like you said, we've got 60 plus, I think I've seen statistics that say 80 and some that say 60% nonviolent, victimless offenders in our federal prison system. And that doesn't even count the state prison system, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So that means you can safely assume that at least 60 to 80% of the people that are approached by police are nonviolent, victimless human beings. We take that away, that right for that officer to come essentially harass somebody who's doing nothing but standing on the corner. You're going to see a police brutality rate drop almost overnight.
Mm-hmm.
They won't have a reason.
For sure. And the thing is, it's undeniable. The fact, and now again, I would call for full, I want people to be able to snort cocaine off the back of a hooker as often as they can. I don't care.
Yeah.
What people want to do with their own bodies is their own business. I don't care. I might not choose to do it, but what they choose is their own damn business. But we need to get these fucking pigs out of our lives and stop them from killing folks. I don't care if they're black, pink, purple, white, or green. It just infuriates me that they can get away with this shit all based on a fucking plant that does have medicinal properties. Meanwhile, that cop drinks his fucking, 24 beers, goes home and beats his fucking wife. It's such a pain in the ass, and it needs to end now.
Then I'll say it, and it might not be popular opinion, but I am disappointed with Black Lives Matter in not addressing that. I mean, I'm from Baltimore. That's where that movement got started. I went down to the Freddie Gray protest. I was living in Virginia at the time and drove up. It looked like my city was burning and I was having a panic attack. It was awesome. It really was. The media was doing what it normally does and showing that one bad incident and that's it. But in the evolution, and what, we're going on 10 years or longer, no representative of BLM has come out and said, hey, I bet if we end, the drug law, victimless crimes, prostitution, whatever, I bet if we stop this, we will stop seeing our brothers and sisters being killed at the rate of 2.5 every single day on the street at the hands of police. It seems really, really simple. It's frustrating to me. But I understand, because when you've got so much death, it's kind of hard to look past the tree into the whole forest. But maybe that's something, man, I don't even know how to bring that up. I've been to a couple of demonstrations over the past few months since all this have gone down, over the past few years. I've brought it up. People agree. I think everybody's just scared to say something, to be honest.
It is.
The Democratic delegates just voted out the end of prohibition or marijuana legalization from their party platform. Yeah. Now, that was news this past weekend.
Wow.
I think that's what it's got to do with. We all know that, obviously Democrats or special interest groups on that side are trying to help BLM as they would. The empathetic, giving side of this political party. but yeah, they wouldn't want to buck their funders, right?
Right.
It's kind of funny that the Democratic, and like, I'm young, so I mean, I don't spend all my time looking at politics and all that, but from what I've known, it's funny that the Democratic Party is now trying to like help us when they've always been trying to help us. But it's like, if you go back, and this only bill that I know, it was a Democratic man who signed a crime bill, and there's Democratic people who signed a crime bill for putting away people with drugs. And I mean, I haven't seen anything reformed on that bill. I mean, I'm fairly sure there was some kind of alterations to it, but now they want to help because there's this, people of color. Now, I'm not saying that white people don't smoke their weed, but people of color are always, what was it? It was like a white man can be found with cocaine in his car and get a ticket, opposed to a black man getting the same amount of cocaine but put away. Like,
Yep.
there's, and you can play this game saying, oh yeah, well, we're trying to help you guys out, and then like we're trying to, but it happens every 4 years when you're trying to get a black vote. But all those 3 years, get your ass in prison, get your ass in prison. So it's kind of funny how they tiptoe on both sides, but nobody really like points it out. And then when it's pointed out, it's an unpopular opinion, and like not everybody's like agreeing with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and there's also that element of, it's not just the police brutality that gets manifested in this, and those confrontations and the incarceration and what that does just from getting people from like their normal lives and into prisons, but it's also what that does for what the 13th Amendment says, which is that slavery is allegedly illegal unless you are convicted of a crime, and then you can be indentured servants for however long they see fit to make you an indentured servant. And that's where the real racket is, and that's where like this it's really a clever game if you think about it, how there's this I don't want to say it's necessarily just election year, because it's kind of like a persistent thing, but it seems to be ramped up. Like we had kind of a nice little peaceful stretch there for a year or so where it wasn't like it is now. And then all of a sudden, the streets are on fire and everything. And ultimately we're going to end up with either Trump or Biden, and it's going to be more of the same oligarchs running shit anyway, and putting people in prison for the same stuff that they were putting them in for. Maybe even for other stuff, other like even less innocuous or more harmless stuff than what they've been putting people in jail for. So I'm not surprised at all, because this is kind of the MO, is to keep people, especially with something like this, where now I've never smoked. I don't know that I ever will. I have like same sort of thing as Marcus, except my job is like year round, where I don't have a summer of opportunity or anything like that. I don't know that I ever will. I'm not necessarily saying that I desperately want to or anything like that, but I will fight to the death. I'm willing to die to fight for the rights of people who they either want or need or see the value in it, because it's none of my business what someone else puts in their body. It's none of my business whatsoever. And the more that I see people being harassed and harmed by the existence of a law that has only anything to do with people like not agreeing with what somebody else does, I really have to take it back and say, this is not just, I think that you have people who are control and power mongers who use the sentimentalities and the feelings of busybodies and prudes to get their agenda pushed through, where they can control more people. Because there is an element of that busybody prude, that Puritan sort of, drugs are bad, alcohol's bad, we need to outlaw all this stuff. The same people that did prohibition a century ago comes from a lot of like this, religious type of, you think that you can somehow like legislate people's morality to be like what you think it should be for them to be, saved by Jesus or whatever. That's not how that shit works, number one. And number two, those people are pawns who are being used by power mongers who want to control people. And the best way you can control people is to not let them enjoy a substance that can open their mind and release their mental capacity to a place where they can imagine things that we are dumbed down into not even thinking are possible through a horrible education system.
No, I find that actually hilarious. The education has always pushed, drugs are bad, alcohol. They drop us with the DARE program. And, they say it's the gateway drug. It's the gateway drugs. Don't smoke weed. And they know what they're talking about, because let me tell you, excuse me, no.
They don't talk about Tylenol being a gateway drug to pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, no, they don't. But it's the fact that, one, it's natural, and two, or for the most part, it should be natural. Two is, once you ingest that drug, it automatically changes your perception. As soon as you have a perception altering drug, say is alcohol, that's why all these 21-year-olds that haven't had alcohol in their life for the first time, they are able to pop a bottle and say, whew, this is nasty, but it feels good. And then they just overdose themselves with alcohol, and that goes to another story. But it's the fact that once you alter your perception and view things in a different light, it goes against them, because then you start to question what's their reality to what should be reality.
So Joey, in your experience, because for me, I come from a background of being all different spiritually. I practice voodoo. I have always been a bit different when it comes to religion. So from my perspective, adding weed didn't matter. And see, I'm gonna catch Chad one of these days and either get him high or say, okay, they can't test for mushrooms, and hand him anyway.
Yeah.
But
right,
But have you seen some of the pushback from Christians, or have you found that is just more of a generality?
It's general. Chad, you're right. They use the drug war didn't start. Those laws didn't get enacted for a good reason. These aren't unfortunate consequences to the people who backed them up. They are unfortunate consequences because they were sold it wrong, and it was sold, just like Chad said, on, oh, this is bad, this is altering your perception, this is against God's will, and in this society that was so predominantly Christian. And that's how prohibition won. Like, that's why the propaganda was able to succeed. That's why people actually believe that you would smoke weed and kill yourself because of reefer madness, or kill other people, right? So that was used. Now, I grew up and was raised in a Lutheran church, and I've always considered the Lutherans like the potheads of Christianity, right? Because they're real laid back. There's no gays have always been accepted in the church. It's when it comes to weed and stuff, there's just like a don't ask, don't tell thing. They don't shame people. I didn't grow up in that judgmental society. I don't know if that was my individual church or the Lutheran religion on a whole, because I've not been to multiple churches. Right. I've been to other churches that are different, from different sects. But even it crosses all religious lines. You talk to somebody who's an atheist and that don't believe anything, and they're still hardcore against weed for whatever reason. It's important
against the use of weed.
Yeah, just the
like
use.
Okay. Not against the prohibition. They're against weed. Okay.
Yeah, they're against weed, or people using it, and their arguments always, well, I've seen somebody ruin their life on weed. Dude, I've seen somebody ruin their life at the horse track, or shopping, or you know what I mean, buying too many cars because they have this like.
Do you think it's also due to the it's always that stigma that's been passed down from like an older generation, and it's like, don't always follow the in crowd because they find it cool or whatnot, or like your parents say you jump off the bridge with your friends, and you look at them saying no, but in actuality you're jumping off the bridge with your friends. But do you think it's it's like the old parenting, or is it's just themselves? It's like I can tell you about an album, and I'm like, no, that album is terrible, but you have yet to experience it. And then when they go experience it, they're like, I actually like this album.
That's
Or
usually how it is. When I was real active in Maryland, the medical market was just opening up, and you had a bunch of senior citizens that had never tried weed because they were scared. Actually, somebody that I worked directly with, he was raised, back to religion, he was raised as a strict Muslim. I mean, his wife was given to him with a dowry, whole nine,
Oh, wow.
Muslim, and he was told that weed was bad and horrible and, you know, da da da. Ended up getting hooked on pills for just random stuff. You know how doctors are. They hand them out to you. Hey, doc, I've got a headache. Take this. Hey, you don't even have to ask for it. They give it to you.
not weed, a pill.
Not weed, a pill.
They don't want you to take anything that might open your mind. They just want you on sedatives. That's all it is.
So this guy started having seizures, right, in 2017, and he decided to try weed for the first time. And he said he was super reluctant, like he had actual anxiety over this. And then, tried it and was like, why have you all been lying to me? You know, he actually went on to start working in the industry to the effect of making machinery for it. So he's trying to help the industry now that he's had a revelation. I think where it all needs to change is the DARE programs and the teaching to abstain. Like, that doesn't work in sex. It's not going to work in drugs. And actually, here in Colorado, there's a group, Psychedelic Club of Colorado Springs, and one of the gentlemen works for the community college, and he does a harm reduction class for the college level students. So he tells them, here's what ecstasy is, here's what it could do for you, pros, cons, you know, here's what you do if you overdose. And then they go into this, that. And so they don't teach the kids to do drugs. They don't teach them not to do drugs. They just say, here's what they are. Here's what might happen. You decide what you want to decide. Because with the DARE programs, it backfires, right? We sat there, in my case, and I think they've actually taken weed out of their curriculum, DARE, from what I understand in the past few years. But we were told that weed and heroin were the same damn thing, right? So the first time that this kid tries weed, and they realize that the teacher was lying to them, they're going to assume that they were lying to them about heroin too. And guess what? That's not safe. Like, that's not cool. And I can't help but wonder if that's a big part of our, you know, my generation's, you know, substance abuse problem is we were misinformed about all this stuff.
For sure.
Side note.
You think that's changing with this generation, though?
I hope so. Like
no,
I said,
it is. We're rebellious. I'm sorry to cut you off. We're like a rebellious generation, and they messed up giving us the internet. They messed up giving us the internet.
Nico's 22, by the way. Nico's 22, so he's a baby compared to me.
Hey, hold
Marcus.
on now.
I don't know how old Joey
baby,
is.
But the mental, I'm rocking like a good.
You were
like
literally not
27,
even a baby when I
mental.
was married.
Okay.
When I got married, you weren't even a baby yet, man.
I had no saying on when my parents decided to try and make me. I'm
old enough to have been at Hands Across America. That's all I'm going to say.
Question though. This is a side note. While they say that they gave us DARE, they gave us sex ed, and they try and like tell us like, oh well, sex is bad, abstinence. Do you think that was another way to try and cull the population, like to try and like minimize it? Or because like
Maybe.
With DARE, they try and like change your perspective on what alcohol. We're taught that sex is to reproduce, but they make sure they tell us all this STDs, which you need to know, and like the condoms and all that. Do you think that it was placed there to try and like skew the numbers of people that are popping out?
Dude, maybe if not that, the family court system and the way they treat people is deterrent enough to not want to have a kid for a younger generation, I think. Like, so maybe, I don't know. I think that's just like an unintended consequence of people trying to keep their kids safe when it comes to sex ed anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, then again, it's like, no, because you're right. Because even with sex ed, you know, they blow herpes out of proportion, and it's like, it's an inconvenient sore every now and then that people have to deal with. This is not something that's going to kill you. And that's how it's presented to the kids. So, yeah, maybe so, man.
I have a question, kind of going back, Joey. I was curious for my own sake. do you happen to know about the time that reefer madness and the hardcore push to criminalize cannabis started? Do you know about the year? Any
1937 is the
Okay.
year the Controlled Substance Act was put into place, and that's
Okay.
that time frame's kind of where everything started rolling downhill.
When did that like fall off? Because my grandmother was born in 1932. Granted, she was in Haiti and then came over here, and the laws are different. Because my grandmother does not she doesn't condone cannabis or anything. She's old school Seventh-day Adventist, so like she's all up in her segment of religion, but she and granted she's old school, but usually like in the Caribbean and all the other places, they're more open with it. They have less laws on it. um I don't know where I was going with this. I'm fairly sure I had a statement or something like that.
Something about when it was.
No,
when
yeah,
the,
no,
when
yeah.
the,
So when
when the
did
act
when did
was,
when did it
37.
end? When did like, because Reefer Madness, I've heard it like a couple of times. You guys are just reinstating it into my brain, but like it fell off. So like, when did that saying kind of fall off?
I mean, I think it just evolved, right? Like it went from reefer madness, and then they were those damn hippies, right? And then they were beatniks somewhere in between there. It was just, any weed smokers have been categorized, and the
Right,
word marijuana was actually created. It's not.
right.
It's a
Because
fake
it's not.
word. I own it because it sounds good in a song, right? But yeah, but yeah, I mean, even that was meant to put a negative like the China virus, same kind of thing. You know what I mean? And it's always been to just disparage those people who use. And I was somebody, I came up managing auto shops, and when my colleagues found out that I was smoking, like they would fall on their ass because I'm not that like stoner. I don't even think it has fallen off. Like you've still got Cheech and Chong, and I can't stand those reefer movies. Like they might be
Yeah,
cute, but they're so programming. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
No, that's TV. That's
Yeah, that's
television.
Hollywood though.
Yeah,
That's what
that's
Hollywood
most
does.
definitely.
Hollywood is part of the oligarch conglomerate that is like designed to like steer public perception of things, and make it to where we're doing like I made the mistake of posting a video about with these doctors that were on the steps of the Supreme Court yesterday, and I got my Twitter account suspended this morning. Woke out that my Twitter account had been suspended, and it's like, so like I didn't threaten to kill anybody. I didn't like ask somebody to go kill somebody for me or anything like that. I didn't do
No harm.
anything except post a video of some people talking on the steps of the Supreme Court. And like, you are going to threaten to delete my Twitter account for posting that video? Like, this is where we are. It's like you better get back to your cage, otherwise, we're going to shot the freaking cattle prod again.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the reason I asked about
Hollywood does that same thing with their messaging. It's a gentler way of doing that very thing. Like it's like, hey, I know you were thinking about this, but look how stupid, Harold and Kumar are when they get high and go to White Castle. You know what I mean? Like it's
Actually,
kind of
I will
shit.
say this. There's one movie that did a good portrayal on drugs, and that's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And they break down each kind of drug element. And granted, Johnny Depp was completely wacky in that movie. And his
Johnny
homeboy,
Depp.
It's Johnny Depp, yeah.
yeah, and him and his boy were acting completely crazy, but the narrating, and I forgot, Hunter S. Thompson, I think his name was.
Yeah.
He portrayed it. No corona. He portrayed it very, very well, and he showed you the altering. He showed you what it is. He shows you like he shows you like for LSD, it was kind of out of proportion, but it wasn't, because it was Hollywood. You gotta fake it, but it was nice not it was what is it, kind of precise representations of what the drugs can do.
Yeah, I agree. It was sensationalized, but it did like show pros and cons. Like it showed the euphoria in the moment where, there was a revelation because of the drug. And then it showed oh shit, I did way too much of this and probably shouldn't at the end. But yeah, I would agree with that. That, and even like, there was a scene in Natural Born Killers where they were in a tent with an old shaman they ran into in the desert. If you guys know what scene I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And they're doing some peyote or something. And I think that scene was pretty well produced. And I didn't hate Hollywood for that one. That one.
The reason I asked about when Reefer Madness came out and when that really pushed was because when we were talking about religion and all of that stuff, it reminded me of what Woodrow Wilson did in 1913 and around in 1917 and all those that time with the Federal Reserve and all of that
time of awesome laws.
Right. Yeah. It reminded me of how
YouTube verification.
Right. It reminded me of how he got that done, and how he got that done was by I did years ago. I did a term paper in college about Wilson and how evil he was. There was a bunch of other stuff in there too, but what he did was he wrapped the language of religion into it so that he could sell it. And that's really what it seems like was done. And why I think that it's clear is there's this particular age, like from about Wilson's time to about World War II, Edward Bernays, who was kind of perfected American propaganda. And if you don't know who he is, I strongly suggest you look him up. He's an ass clown who you need to learn from. And but that way of portraying things and using propaganda that is prevalent in everything we do, from all of these movies that we've been talking about and the different ways that things are perceived, that was absolutely the same formula that Bernays laid out. And it sounds like that Bernays, if he wasn't behind it, students of Bernays were behind how they attacked cannabis. Does that sound about right?
It's a genius marketing plan. I mean, it struck all religions. Like I said, my Muslim friend, the Muslim culture is where Afghan and Kush strains came from. So the Muslim culture utilized cannabis as much as the Christian culture did historically. And somehow, somewhere, something happened. There was like a rift in the timeline. And globally, all of a sudden, this plant is bad. I don't know. I don't even want to get into conspiracy theories, but it's like, is that not the clearest, like the clearest piece of evidence that you need that there is some one world, maybe not government, but organization, communication, scheming going on that, America says, oh, weed's bad. Globally, everybody's using it. And then all of a sudden, within 5-6 years, it's bad everywhere. What?
Yeah.
It's
well. And so here's the thing about it too, for me, just from the simplest perspective that I can bring to it is that you have like the alcohol and tobacco industries, which right as alcohol was coming out of prohibition, and you're going into and you're starting to do the I guess the early pharmaceuticals, so to speak, and you're building into that more and more. If you think about a plant that you can grow in your backyard, that once you get it going, you don't need to buy. Like if you know somebody who has a garden, or you have a garden of your own, you can attest to this. I can attest to it a little bit because I don't have a huge garden now. We just moved. But I've had a decent sized tomato garden in the past. Like, it was really cool not ever needing to buy tomatoes from the store. You just went to the back end. Yeah, nice. You just went to the backyard and picked your tomatoes. It saves you money. It saves you like all the pesticides and everything else that you don't know what's coming in, and you have more control of what's going into your body at that point. You take that and you say, no, that's bad. we're gonna make that illegal. And if we find that you're doing it, we're gonna steal your shit and raid your house and put you in jail and make you pay a bunch of money. So instead, what you should do is you should buy the stuff that we want to sell you, or that our sponsors want to sell you.
It's like moonshine. It's because they can't tax it.
Yep.
That was evident. You can get in trouble for growing your own tomatoes if you accept $1 from your neighbor for it. Technically, does it happen?
Right.
But you can. We're that regulated.
Right.
During World War I and World War II, the federal government actually required farmers. They put that regulation in after they enacted prohibition. They put a regulation in that said that all farmers had to grow X amount of hemp on their farms for the war effort.
I do remember hearing that.
Yeah.
Hey, Joey,
your mic
your audio
dropped off or something. Yeah, I don't know if you lost your mic or something happened.
Hey, is it better now?
it is.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
Yeah, but
we
yeah,
heard you.
well,
It was just light.
you also had the AAA, the Agricultural Administration Act. They actually had farmers, like, they forced them to cease growing certain crops because they wanted to maintain the price levels. So you have people waiting in line and starving and waiting in line for food that they're rationing out, because they don't have the crops. But they also want to make sure that the prices don't go too low by overproducing. So they want to control the supply. So they would have farmers either not grow crops, or they would actually burn their crops to keep prices of the crops elevated. This
That
is,
just happened with COVID. They had farmers burning their crops and killing their livestock.
Yep.
For sure.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Global food crisis.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly right.
Yeah.
And that's why the thing that you were saying, like, when you don't think that, like, there may be something that's a little more interconnected globally than just like some random happenstance bullshit that goes across multiple major countries. Maybe you're the one who's crazy if you don't think that there's something else going on.
Right. And don't discount Standard Oil and the Rockefeller Foundation. Right, exactly. But don't discount the ideas that because I know this is supposed to be a conspiracy theory or whatever, but it's just the way it is. The Rockefeller Foundation and Standard Oil was the Bill Gates of a different generation. And whereas Microsoft and Bill Gates are getting into everything and getting into like pharmaceuticals and getting into vaccines and all that crap.
He's got farming, right?
Yeah.
He's got
disparage the foremost medical authority on the planet, Bill Gates.
What is it? He's also, I read an article where he's got some like corn, like he has his hand in like vegetation. And
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I'm okay on Bill Gates' corn.
yeah. So, Joey, it's been great having you. You're welcome to stay. It's been an hour. I had scheduled you for an hour. If you want to chill out for a little bit, you can. If not, I'll go ahead and let you do an outro, and we'll talk to you later. It's been great.
Actually, where can we connect with you?
If you don't mind sticking around, I have a question, like a serious question I want to ask as a completely like non weed smoker or anything like that. That I have a question. But if you have to go, I understand. It's no big deal.
I can hang around for another minute. So,
okay. Okay.
But this is a good place, Joey, if you want to go ahead and plug your sites and whatnot. But everything will be down in the show notes. But if you want to go ahead and give yourself a plug, do so, please.
Yes,
you can find all my links at platoon420.com, which I try very hard to keep well updated all by my lonesome. There's a donation link on there. You can buy rally swag designed by yours truly to, really state what's on your mind. There's no reason to sugarcoat it. We even have coffee and CBD products on there. And like I said, we report the drug war news from the perspective of the victim. So I spend every morning looking through the headlines because there's statistically one arrest for drug possession, nonviolent, simple drug possession every 50 seconds in this country.
Jesus.
Disgusting.
It's disgusting. And I find stories of people who are arrested. And of course, all these stories, for instance, a woman tried to get into Disney. She had a handgun in plain sight in her diaper bag and some weed. It's against Disney's policy to go in there, right? Well, they painted her out to be this violent, gun-toting criminal. You know, mother, blah, blah, blah. How many times does somebody walk up to the gate and they don't know they've got their handgun or their weapon on them, right? Their knife or something. I'd like to think that the majority of those people just get turned away. Ma'am, you've got to go put your thing in your car. Right. This was all over the weed. She's painted out to be a criminal, shamed. You know, now she's got to deal with this in her neighborhood. Her kids have to deal with this. So we rewrote the story because she was harassed. She was victimized. She was taken to an internment camp. She is a prisoner of the drug war, as far as I am concerned. And
so you just interpreted the article into like real language?
Yeah, real language.
Instead of propaganda language. There you go. I love it.
Yeah, people were abducted from the side of the road, and it's a tragedy too, because even in instances where somebody is violent, let's say a domestic violence issue, right? You get a call, cops show up, and they see one person beating their partner. Okay, but there's weed on the table too. Both of them go to jail for weed, and 9 times out of 10, the violent charge is never given.
Not even part of it.
No, they end up charging them for the weed because it's probably got a longer sentence, and it comes in a plea. So how many violent criminals are actually getting away, and then their victims being criminalized for being there when it really needs to be said the way that it's actually happening. So
yeah,
I invite
like the way that you do that.
That's awesome.
Thank you. And if you know anybody that wants to offer their journalistic talents, I'd be happy for a little assistance. But we do have
you guys hear it there.
I might actually hit you up because I've been actually thinking about doing something like that anyway, just in general, because I think that there needs to be, in a lot of cases, like a translator for what shit that politicians and cops and stuff like that are saying, what they're actually saying versus what the pretend language is that they're using, because so often it's like the propaganda language is the language that we've come to expect, and it's bullshit, and it's not telling you the truth. It's telling you, it's like letting the kid who stole, like you got 2 kids in your house, they're fighting over something, and one of them stole something from the other one, but the other one hit him because he stole the thing, and you're only listening to the kid who got hit by the kid that stole something from him, and you're letting him give his whole story.
Yeah, it's a mess. I got to time out you guys for 1 second. I'll be right back.
Okay.
You know what it reminds me of though, Chad? It's like the terms of agreements. Like you don't read that, but the thing is, they sneak some sneaky shit in there. And so once you hit agree, you just signed that. You signed over your whole soul. They can watch you whenever you want on your camera. You got to give up your 3rd child. Don't forget that.
So one of the things that's interesting about that is that there's actually like quite a bit of precedent in. Now, I'm not saying this is like a guarantee and you should just rest easy on this. But in a lot of cases, like judges have like completely overturned any kind of cases against people who just hit because it's like when it's like 75 pages of bullshit, legal jargon and boilerplate crap that nobody reads anyway, then there's no there's no reasonable assumption that you agreed to if they have in there something about like you must amputate your right leg and give it to us so we can eat it, like that kind of shit. They would not fly. But the question, Joey just walked in on like this, like, what the hell did happen when I was gone? We were talking about terms of use agreement. Terms of use agreements and how like they can sneak shit into them, and like there's precedent for those things don't hold up if they're not if it's not like a reasonable expectation of what because most people are just like, yeah, whatever, get me through to the site that I'm going to. I'm not reading all that crap.
It's intentional.
The question I had for you was so like I have a thing like I tried to smoke like a tobacco cigarette a long time ago before I was 20 years old, choked me half to death. And I know that's like, it's like one of those things that's like, virgin. But like I have a thing about like sucking smoke, actual like smoke into my lungs. I'm not a big fan of it. I don't think it's a good idea. So like from a cannabis standpoint, smoking versus like edibles or something like that, where you're not doing that part of where you might do damage to your respiratory system or anything like that, but you still have the therapeutic or other effects of the plant.
Yeah,
What's
and
your
that's fair enough. I am somebody who got hooked on nicotine at an early age, and I'm not going to lie, I love putting smoke into my lungs, right? But that's different. It's not everybody. But yeah, you've got edibles, vaporizing, and it's weird. And when I say that, vaporizing, a lot of people think of these cartridges they're putting out. I'm suspect to those, man, because they're made
These
with
are very
chemicals.
suspect. I don't like them.
I don't know what chemicals they're made of, but what I do know is they have flower vaporizers, and they've had these for years. I got mine back in, the early millennium for a ridiculous
Isn't
amount
it
of
just like
money. It's super cheap now. But yeah, it's a volcano. It's fills up a bag, and it eliminates the carbon. So you're just inhaling the vapor from
THC.
Yep. And actually, when you unload it, your weed is still there. It's not burnt because it wasn't combusted in any way. It's just a little bit darker because all the good stuff has come out of it. So it uses that green and that sparkle because
Actually,
you burnt all that.
can you put a link in that? Because I actually want one of those. I
Yeah,
actually want
probably volcanovaporizer.com.
The thing, Chad, about edibles is you have to take in consideration you are digesting it differently. There's a different chemical that activates it from your stomach. You will get high.
Okay.
It's an all high body feeling. There's a difference between when you inhale it and the inhale is more of a head high. Depends on what kind of weed you get because there's a difference between sativa and indica. The indica is indoor, so you'll be chill, relax. Sativa, you're up and alert for some strange reason. Beautiful, probably my favorite, but it's actually
like
fun.
that.
You don't like
No,
the
I'm a sativa person too, but I've seen people get thrown into anxiety attacks over it. Like, I'm
yeah,
not
that's the
into
thing
it.
you have to worry about is but it enhances your it can enhance your paranoia. That's the weed. Like it
is
if
that the
you're
thing you were talking
paranoid.
about with your cousins that y'all like running around and you got like stuck in like or was that an acid deal? I don't remember.
That was the trip, my friend. That was
That was the trip. Okay.
that was the they call that a nightmare trip.
Okay.
We added another chemical compound onto a compound that was already there. It just it re-heightened us. It reactivated the acid, and my boy wasn't prepared for it, so it threw us into like it threw us into a different dimension basically. Like I mean, if you want to hear the story, I'll go. So for you, Jane, all in all, me and my friends had an acid trip, and you have to have the right mental. You're aware of psychedelics, right?
Yep.
So
I find them very beneficial, but
they
can
are
be very
the goat.
dangerous.
They're very dangerous. They can be very dangerous, but it's always preferred that you're in the element for it. But we were at my friend's house, and we were staying the night, and it was probably around 7 o'clock in the morning ish. We took it at night, and we went to go smoke, and we were outside. It was freezing cold. Then we come back inside, and
That's a first mistake.
yeah, I wasn't affected. They were complaining, but we went inside and everything just switched. Like it flipped. Our lives were like we felt different, and there was like the acidic green tint of like weed that just came over our vision, and we looked at the sun, and it looked pretty to me, but it looked a little too pretty, and so we went to go sit down on the couch, and my homie's face melted, and then my other homie melted inside the couch. So then I was like, oh, this is no bueno. So I tried pulling out my phone. The funny thing about phones and psychedelics is they don't mesh. Like technology and
No mirrors. Stay away.
Actually, I like mirrors. There's something that so then we I was like, okay, we're screwed. So let's go run back downstairs. So we run back downstairs. I saw a door trip inside itself. Like I saw a door do some tumbling. So we all get inside the room and we're like, okay, this is very different. Like, okay, we're okay, boys. Like, we're back into the area we were initially tripping in, and all of a sudden, we all die. If in a sense, like, we were like, oh God, where's our bodies? Like, we're about to die. Like, we honestly thought we were never going to get out of this state. And so one instant, we all were linked inside each other's heads. So I was my homie who was sitting on the bed, and I was also my homie who to the right of me, and we were like looking, and like every time we looked, like our heads were like synchronized, and so we felt a sync. We felt in sync. So my homie had a true ego death, and he didn't know who me and my friend Tyson were. He was lost. He needed that. Whew, he needed that. But to the point where we had to go get his sister, and his sister was holding him and making him feel better. Like, hey, I'm here, I'm here. And he kind of knew her, but he didn't. He felt empty, but that's what he initially felt. That's how his life was. That's his emotion. So he threw that onto us. And that was the paranoia that I felt. And I'm not sure if this is scientific or not, but he transferred his paranoia because we're all synced into this parallel or state or a different vibration we were throwing in his. So everything would like melt every like 10 minutes. Like as soon as like the trip reactivated, everything would just start to what you call it? It would melt and say, you're going back into this. So I went upstairs and I was like, okay, I need to get away from that craziness. And I go around to his front room. I'm just sitting, just thinking because, man, thinking off of acid is super fun. Like, it's probably like, if not like after coming off of a THC break, like getting high and sitting down and pondering. So I went in front of a mirror and I was looking at myself. And for some strange reason, I kind of got into a trance of moving my hands like this. I was like double dutching. And then, yeah, I was out here just double dutching in a mirror. And then I see my head on top of like a guy who's sitting on a carriage. That's why my hands were like caught into this like motion because I'm like riding on the back of a carriage type. Yeah.
He's ripping horses and you're double dutching.
Right. And so like my head like just morphed onto this body of somebody who's a traveler, and like I kind of realized I am a traveling person. Like I'm always on a move. I'm a and I don't know if you believe in this, but I'm a Gemini. So it's like I can't stay in one place. Like I always got to go somewhere. And then after that I stopped and I was like, "Huh?" And then my vision went away. And I'm like, "Okay, let's keep going." And then I threw my hands, and like I wasn't doing this on purpose. My hands just got caught just doing this. And then all of a sudden, my head shows up on the body of a monk that's floating. And it's kind of funny because I'm a spiritual person. I've been working on being more of a spiritual person, and that started all in 2016. And the reason why I become more spiritual was because of acid. It was legit because of acid. The reason why that I've come back into my spiritual setting. And so like that's why I say that the altered perception of it, of these altering drugs, you call it alcohol, you call it weed, you call it whatever. It's the ideas start formulating after that, and then on top of that, you start to deduce and analyze situations differently from that mindset you always had. So my friend and I, the one that threw us in this crazy acid trip, me and him were having a rough patch. Me and him sat down and talked about it, and legit, the tear ducts, I felt them behind my eyes. They exploded, and I just started crying. And he was talking to me, and he was crying first. Yeah.
Joey done got like 8 deliveries while you've been talking. She's just getting like hand off.
Yeah, I actually should be going on a THC break. There's this interesting concept I was introduced to, and I did a poor job with my discipline, but we're back on it. That's why we ran today. So basically, I take a month off from weed, and then the last 3 days I fast and get everything out my system. The next day I smoke. I grab a whole bunch of information and I smoke, and then I read the information. Because when you first smoke, because you know when you smoke, it opens you up. You just feel open. You know, like whenever you smoke a little bit, you feel just right. You just want to clean something, or you're like really focused on something. Huh? You're still muted.
Yeah, I don't hear you.
You're muted.
We can hear you, Joey.
You still muted.
That's muted.
Muted.
Damn.
Try it now.
No.
Okay.
All right.
All in all, it's supposed to open. I want to it's supposed to like be able to.
Yeah, can you guys hear me now? I can
Yeah.
hear you.
Yeah, there you go.
Beautiful.
What were you saying?
Right. That was quick. Shit.
That was weird. Nicco was saying, you know, how you just smoke and you want to clean. I mean, yeah, there's strains for that. There's strains that make you want to sleep. It's
yeah.
So Joey, just another question I have for you. I know that you've looked into a variety of different things, and I know that your activism with cannabis brought you to Adam and those kinds of things. But if they say that weed is a gateway drug, and the thing is, I find that to be true, but not towards drugs. I find it to be a gateway to all kinds of things. Yeah, exactly. What kind of things do you attribute your cannabis activism beyond the freedom movement in general to opening you up to other ideas? What kind of ideas did it open you up to?
You're right. It's the gateway to free thinking is why they don't want us to have it. And you talked about when your perception changed a while back, and I remember when mine did, because you know when you're in high school, you get together on the weekend with your friends, a bunch of people you don't know, and there's a kegger or a bottle of Jack, or we all know how high school is, okay?
Right.
I remember drinking the first time, and I didn't like that. I didn't have any control. I don't like being out of my own control. I was a serious control freak when I was in high school. I've gotten better, but thanks to weed. But no, and then I ended up being that kid smoking a joint in the corner and taking care of all my drunk friends. And I remember asking my mother, low key, I didn't want her knowing I was doing either, even though I'm sure she knew better. Like, Ma, how come?
Mom, asking for a friend.
Right. No, but I'm like, Ma, how come all the pothead kids are supposed to be bad? I'm supposed to stay away from them, yada, 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 yada. But they're really nice to me, right? They carry my books to class. If something happens, they'll help. They're really friendly. They're never shitty to me. But these football player jock guys that I'm supposed to look up to, that drink every weekend and turn into raging douchebags, I'm supposed to look up to them. Like, and I'm like, why is weed illegal and alcohol not? It seems like these weed kids are a lot more nicer, that right? And she goes, I don't know. I can't answer that. You're right. That was it. She ended it right there. And I think that was the moment where my head was like, right? Like, okay. And, you know, I did what I did and had a very don't ask, don't tell, you know, relationship with that when I was a child. And I was always encouraged to research and kind of take things for what I saw them as, you know, like based on, that's where it all started. My mind was allowed to open. My mom allowed my mind to open. When I asked her that question when I was 10, 11, 12, however old I was, right? When I asked her that question, she didn't feed me this line of bullshit about how weed was bad. She just said, I don't know, they teach that. Well, but it seems like, you know, alcohol is more dangerous than weed. Well, it is. And then she just left it at that. She didn't elaborate. Maybe she could have, she didn't, but she didn't lie to me. And
no, what's crazy about it is like so again, I to keep reiterating this, but I don't know this from firsthand experience here, but from what I understand, it's just like people just like pass stuff around and they're sharing this stuff and everything. And then people go to a bar and they get in fights, you know, like it's like two completely different worlds. Like, you know, on the one hand, you have a bunch of people who are chill and like hanging out with each other and sharing thoughts, ideas, and a joint or a blunt, you know, whatever. And then by the other thing, it's like, were you looking at my girlfriend? You know, and then a fist fight breaks out and the bar gets torn up. And
isn't
that's
it
alcohol.
perfect to keep the citizens fighting with each other? Because then the police have something to do in order to go and fight for the state. I mean, isn't that just?
Don't you find it funny that it's more accessible in college?
Yeah.
It's like
and when you're an adult.
It's like Bud Light sponsors the Super Bowl. There's 4-year-olds like that think the Super Bowl is the biggest thing in this country, right? And those football players should be their idols, and they're sponsored by Bud Light, and that's supposed to be okay. And you know,
and most of the football players are smoking weed and not drinking.
Thank you.
The thing is, with all of my experience with metaphysical ideas and all of those practices, it's familiarized me with some interesting perspectives when it comes to things like alcohol versus cannabis versus, you know, different kinds of drugs. Because I was influenced by Aleister Crowley, who didn't ever find a drug he did not like. And but he classified much of these things like he did everything else. For those that don't know about Aleister Crowley, he was a magician that lived a long time ago. Died in the 1940s, I think, early 1940s. Anyway,
he's criminalized by the media too.
For sure.
You know, I mean, completely propagandized by the media.
Absolutely. But one of the things that he did was he experimented with a bunch of shit. Now he became a heroin addict, I mean, because he's trying everything. But one of the things that I find interesting is the comparison between cannabis and alcohol. In Crowley's worldview, if you will, and it comes from Kabbalah, which is which comes from it comes from Kabbalah, which is a Jewish thing. But anyway, long story short, the base of the tree of life, which takes you to enlightenment, if you drink alcohol, it founds you in what's called malkuth, which is the bottom of the tree. It keeps you there in your base instincts, where like all you can think about is fucking fighting and eating, and that's it. Whereas cannabis, on the other hand, is located, according to Crowley, much higher. It's in Tifrith, which is, well, it's going into Tifrith. It's particularly the path of Ayin, which is the eye, and it's the opening eye. It's also attributed to the devil. And the devil in the tarot isn't the devil like bad. It is something that can either set you free or hold you down. And with cannabis, Crowley talked about that it helps you to get past the restraining nature of the devil and find realization within Tifrith, which is where you start to have self-realization. So comparing those in a metaphysical way, one is opening, the other is restraining, and both can have a use. You know, if you want to stay grounded, alcohol is a better choice. But if you want to open your mind, then cannabis or marijuana is a much better choice.
Yeah, and it's like there's a time and place for either one of those things. And that's why I hate to demonize alcohol or even big pharma, because I do believe all these substances are needed, but they shouldn't be pushed one way or the other. It's for the individual and where they're at in their journey to decide how much of these things that they need or don't need. And the only way that somebody can be empowered to do that is by being well informed about all these substances. Harm reduction, you know, that's not abstaining, but the harm reduction. But we got to remove the stigma. And man, I don't know how long that's going to take. Even after drugs are legalized, It's going to happen. It's going to fucking happen. I will see it some way, shape, or form. I know it before the end of my lifetime. But even after that, there's still going to be a stigma.
Yeah.
Well, it's got to be both too. It's got to be legalization and decriminalization, where you release people from jail who've been jailed for something that shouldn't have been illegal in the first place.
And you decriminalize it from the mind, and you don't make it
Right.
a negative entity.
Right.
No, man, like I said, I grew up in the automotive industry. The whole shop smoked weed, and the whole sales department did coke all day long. Did anybody have a problem? No, everybody did their selected drug appropriately because they had to go to work and earn a paycheck. You know what I mean? But then the kid couldn't get his mind straight to figure out what's wrong with that engine unless he smoked, right? And that salesman couldn't work his 12-hour day and run his mouth like this without cocaine. And no, nobody was. I'm sure
being
people
up here.
you know, that's abusing a substance. You can't blame the substance, and we're giving
you blame the abuser.
You've got to blame yourself if you start overusing something. And
not
without
only that. Oh no, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish your point.
With rehab and all this stuff, we teach people to blame the substance, and that is so damaging. It is so damaging. Like, nobody is taught to take self-accountability for, fuck, I can drink too much caffeine. I can eat too much sugar. It's
those are drugs, and we don't reinstate that into the mind. We just say, oh, well, you know, caffeine, it's needed in every day. Dunkin's running on it. You know, America's running on Dunkin'. Caffeine, that's the highest.
Starbucks,
besides sugar, it is the most abused drug. And people don't know that the drug, like for sugar, it can increase your age. It increases it makes it faster. Like it adds inflammation and all this other stuff. So like people don't know.
Inflated my ass like hell.
Nobody knows.
Well, I wanted to also get into so what you were talking about with the rehab and all the things, and like using the things of your choice. One of the things that I also think, beyond just taking the abuser versus looking at the substance as being the problem and the abuser being the problem, there's also a system of like this rat race of oppression and like money printing and keeping up with this debt slavery and everything, that where we are working half of the time to pay taxes and all this other stuff, that when you take all of those things into account, just to make ends meet, just to not get evicted, both parents have to work at least one job, maybe two, and you're doing all this stuff, and a lot of this stuff is just a way of coping with keeping up with that crap to begin with.
We're in an abusive relationship with our government, and we have been at least as long as I was alive. If you pretend, if you walked into a therapist and you talked to them about the government as if they were a human being that you were in a relationship with, they'd be like, get the fuck out, run right now. Don't ever tell them your name and get the fuck out. Don't let me down this person.
They steal from me all the time. They tell me that if I don't do what they tell me to do, they're gonna throw me in a cage. They tell me that all of my ideas are stupid and dangerous, and that I should stop thinking them, and I should only listen to them and do what they tell me. Like it sounds like the most domineering husband in the history of wife beaters.
It's ridiculous. It's blatant.
It makes sense that cops work for him.
So you don't get beat by them. Okay. It's funny. I've been trying to actually sit down and smoke with my dad for the longest, and it's funny because he'll smoke with my older cousins, and the viewpoint father son, and I'm like, I look at him and like, Dad, you sit down and you're reluctant to have a beer with me, but you have a beer with me, and it does 20 times more damage than me smoking my weed. And on top of that, I'm pretty sure we'd be able to have a mind-blowing intellectual conversation and reconnect. What is it? I was watching like a Joe Rogan podcast, and I think Bert said that he sat down and had edible popcorn with his father, I think on purpose or an accident. And he was like, after that day, our relationship has completely changed. And after that, I was like, oh yeah, I'm on a mission to get you to smoke with me because this could be like a super bonding moment. Like you don't hate somebody.
Brownies, man.
You don't hate somebody who sits down and smokes with you because they're passing you the blunt bag. But if I'm at a bar or, you know, I bring up a sore conversation after we're drunk, ooh, you get a little riled, you get a little frazzled. And I'm like, Dad, we're Caribbean. The Jamaicans smoke with their sons all the damn time.
What we do.
We're Haitian. Back in the land, little kids are able to drink. The kids are able to drink and have fun. I'm not trying to force this upon you, and I'm not trying to, like, you know, you gotta smoke with me, but I'm trying to bring you more open to the idea of you won't see it so demonizing when I do it. You understand it, or you understand the concepts of it. So like I remember I'd smoke right before going to work, and then he would smell it on me. He was like, I would recommend you not to do this. And I'm like, Dad, you don't know what weed is, because when I'm at work, I'm on a come down. I got a whole hour of transportation. This kind of mind rambling on that train. I get a lot of ideas created. I got a lot of things done. And then on top of that, I'm dealing, no offense to y'all, I'm dealing with snotty white people or snotty people with money all day, every day. And I'm giving them
I don't
damn
get offended.
food.
I'm not snotty.
But like I'm dealing with like the upper class, because, you know, I'm sitting in this little 5-4-tail hotel, and like I'm like, look, you see me as a little black kid who's serving you food, but I promise you, if I sit down and smoke this blunt with you, you would understand me as a motherfucking adult.
The service industry is so hard. No, you're right. You need something in the service industry. If it's alcohol or whatever whatever that looks like, the service industry.
It's not
whether
nice.
It's waiting tables or vehicle service, or when you're dealing with the general public, it is so difficult. You're right, man. People are so fucking mean.
And I'm in Chicago.
You know why? Because they don't smoke weed, and they think they and and if you smoke weed before coming into your restaurant, they're going to be paranoid, thinking that you're thinking bad on them for smoking weed and cop an attitude with you. Like it's all, people are not encouraged to be themselves, and I think that's one of the big deals.
No, conformity is heavy.
I like the freedoms.
Forced into it, and then you want to know why people don't get stressed out. Like, thank God I turned into a pothead. We all got to cope somehow now, right?
I'm always blessed. I'm always blessed to be a pothead.
That's it.
Okay, so to that point, in a world that pushes with so many different stimuli, pushes people into coping mechanisms. Okay, and then you have the pharmaceuticals that you're driven towards by the medical industry, and just by the stigma and the advertisements and the stuff that's available over the counter, even where you don't even need a prescription, don't even need a doctor to have anything to do with it. So you're driven towards that stuff, pushed towards that stuff, alcohol, pushed towards that, nicotine, tobacco, you're pushed towards that, because these are massive industries that have kind of gained favored status with the people who run shit. But then the stuff that is prohibited, what is the what are the consequences? Like the call them unintended or call them intended. I sometimes I wonder. But when people start to try to cut corners, make synthetics, cut things because then, you know, the price goes up when it's illegal. It's more expensive because you have to deal with all the ways to get around all shit. Whereas if it was out in the open, it wouldn't be shit to like grow some shit in your backyard and, you know, go sell the stuff to whoever, you know, next, you bring it to your next door neighbor or whatever. When you bring in all of that avoidance of authority into the picture, you create a price structure that makes it more expensive, leads to the need for more funds, which can lead to criminal activity, but then also leads to the creation of workarounds, synthetics, things that are less healthy than the actual natural substance. Like those consequences of the drug war, what role do you see that playing in how like all this this kind of like creates this this sort of insanity of we're driven towards stuff that's less healthy,
Right.
because the stuff that is more healthy is prohibited.
Yeah,
And
I'll take
expensive.
it back to I'll take it back to, like I said, around the 30s when they started prohibiting everything was legal. Like cocaine was used, opium was used in things. It was in sodas, it was in foods, housewives. It was everywhere. These are all derivatives of natural plants. Like cocaine is not. It's a plant. It's processed. It's an extract, just kind of like THC extract.
Right.
Same thing with
Yeah.
the opium. They were smoking it,
Right.
right?
Poppies. Yeah.
I've got to wonder, right? You used to have this whole demographic of people that went to the opium dens. They passed out, they vomited on themselves, they went home to their wives the next morning, but they had a safe place to sleep and everything was okay, right? Maybe there was a fight in the alley every now and then, nothing different from a barn, right? They criminalized opium, and all of a sudden, there's heroin, which is way more dangerous, but still tickles the fancy of whatever it is in those people that crave that substance, right? We took away the natural option. And I mean, now look at how many heroin and fentanyl overdoses we have. And now you got carfentanil.
Right.
Every time somebody's body gets used to something, they just resynthesize it into something else. Yeah.
Right.
It's insane.
Right.
I'm all for, let's revive the opium den. Let them go smoke opium, be safe, and I bet you will see a drop in heroin overdose and usage, period. Like, we need
And
we need to be a balance, too. Like, we've got to stop criminalizing one thing or the other. Like, we need to teach balance.
Right. So I just Googled, The Wizard of Oz was in 1939. And do you remember when they fell asleep in the poppy field? Like, it was just like a thing. It was like it was just like, I was like, hey, what's this deal with the poppy field? Why are they acting all weird and like sleepy and stuff in the poppy field? And, and my parents were like, we're going to talk about that. And it's just, now it's like, oh, I get it now. Like, that shit was okay.
You want to hear a funny
then,
thing?
And it was starting to become less okay. And then by the time I saw The Wizard of Oz for the first time, all that shit was illegal.
A funny
but it was
thing.
in The Wizard of Oz.
They did that in Finding Nemo. The turtles. Remember the turtles? They're like, yo.
Oh, yeah.
So every time a sea turtle
on the bubbles,
it eats what is it? It eats a jellyfish, and the toxins in the jellyfish get the turtles high. So when you saw them like, yo, they were high. They presented a fact. Good job, Disney. You did one good thing, but they just showed it right in the open, and people didn't like, why are the turtles acting so slow? Is it because they're slow on land? Nah, they were high.
We talk about those things as Alice in Wonderland. I mean, you're right there. It was
the mushrooms.
Those things are being written. It's like no one was ashamed to talk about, like, oh yeah, you eat a mushroom, you might eat too much, a really bad day, And
the caterpillar was smoking a hookah and everything.
Actually, the Mad Hatter was actually mad because of the mercury in his hat. So he was driven insane because of that.
The thing is,
honesty back in society, and I think everything will be okay. Man, nothing's bad, but overusing anything is bad. Like, let's be real. You can put X in that sentence. Like, you don't get addicted to blah. But I don't know. In the pharmaceutical industry too, it's they're starting to regulate that. Like you said, they push that on us. That's the easiest substance, and now they're like, oh, you can only refill every 30 days, or else. So you've got a society addicted to what was given to us as a safe option. It's leading us back to a black market that's unsafe. We could have a regulated market that may not be safe, right? That's up to how the consumer uses it, but will at least be transparent and upfront. We'll be able to see the ingredients in whatever it is we are purchasing. And buyers.
For sure. The thing is, this issue, just like any other issue that we run into as voluntarists, the bottom line is shit was fucked up before the government got involved. There was shit fucked up. They came in to solve it, made it worse, and then blamed it on the things that they did not help.
Right.
Never, never have they come in, and I mean never have they come in and made things better. Government does not make things better. They sell these things as if they've made it better, but they don't. You can see it in education. You can see it in environmental issues. You can see it in everything. Government doesn't make things better, ever. And drugs are the exact same thing. Like Joey said, yes, there were people in the opium dens doing God knows what, but at least they had some place, and now they're not sitting in prison because of it. And where they're not only addicted to opium now they're doing coke, now they're doing crack, they're doing everything they can find because they've been put in a prison cell and don't have a goddamn thing else to do. So and they can't keep the drugs out of there, but boy, they're going to save everybody and all that. But the bottom line is they don't fucking make anything better, and they have sold a bill of goods in this issue and every other fucking issue that they can, because they can't, because force does not work. And that's the end of the day. The only way you can decide if you're a cokehead, the only way you decide that you don't want to do cocaine anymore is to decide to stop doing cocaine. That's where it's at.
No one else is going to stop you. Not a law, not a family member, not your own child. Yourself is the only thing. And the more you're pushed, the more you're shamed. I don't care what it is you're on. You're going to resent the people that are telling you this. And
anybody who's ever been addicted or who's known someone who's been addicted knows this firsthand, because they've been through it. They've seen that it doesn't matter what you say, doesn't matter what you try or anything, that a person comes to their realization when they come to their realization on their own. And oftentimes, I think it's counterproductive. A lot of times, I think it actually emboldens people, because no one likes being told what to do. Sometimes people, as we are seeing, sometimes people feel safe when people are giving them some sort of direction, even if it's retarded. But when you tell someone, hey, that thing that you want to do, you better stop doing it, that's when people are like, who the fuck are you to tell me that?
Do it anyway.
And everybody's like that. That's universal. No one is like, you know what? I'm glad you told me to stop doing the thing that I can't stop doing, because if I wouldn't have had you telling me to not do it, I wouldn't have known how to break this addiction. No, that's not how it happens. Like, you figure it out when you get to the point where you're like, holy shit, like I almost died, or, oh my God, I almost lost my job, or I did lose my job. Whatever the case may be, it's your own thing that, like, you hit your bottom whenever you hit your bottom for that sort of thing. And then a lot of times I think people get driven into worse situations by people who are just scared of what they think because they know of some horror story of somebody else who did something, and the person that they're worried about is not even in that realm. They're just like the people, like you guys, like it's like, oh my gosh, Nicco smokes weed, we better do something. It's like, well, shit.
And like, interventions for substances, and it's like, dude, I don't care what the substance is. Addiction to anything is not a problem; it's a symptom of a problem.
Right.
So there's some sort of trauma, there's some sort of glitch, there's something else going on. Nobody wakes up and they're like, I want to go be a junkie. Like, that's what I want to be when I grow up. Nobody does that. It's a symptom, and we are treating it as if it's the problem, and it's not.
Ooh, you just spit some bars. That was actually
no, for real. Like that's like every intervention should be like, hey, what can we help you with? What's going on? Do you what can we? How can we do you need somebody to watch the kids while you if you need to go have some time alone,
yeah,
what do you need, what do you need instead of like, we're gonna throw you in jail if you don't listen to our rules.
Yeah, just doing that will systematically change, the evolution of us. Like, if we stop shaming, because even now, like, if you get a family member you're super concerned about in an intervention situation, okay, and let's say you ask them that, they're going to be scared to tell them because of the judgment. And it's going to take a couple generations to like
Mm-hmm,
that from ourselves, you know? But so
yeah, because they're going to think it's the game of like, you're trying to put me in like a rehab center.
You want to do this to me. You want to demonize me, right? So little Timmy goes out and tries heroin for the first time, and he's one of those people that gets that instant opioid addiction, right? He really wants to ask his parents what he should do for help, but he can't. He's terrified he's going to get locked up, kicked off the football team, yada, 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 right?
Kicked out of the house, maybe. You know?
Yeah, we have to remove that fear so people can be truthful with their loved ones in their community, and then they can all work together to do what's best for whatever, you know, that individual's needs are, if they care about them, you know. It's
I personally believe that it's the judgmental society that, like, it's the heavy lingering. So it's like, say you go out and you're doing your business. I smoke my weed, and you know, when I first started it, and you know, since it's been demonized for so long, you know, I you know, all the kids try and hide it, and then when you try and hide something, and then people come down bearing on you, saying, "Oh, you need to change up," then you become reclusive and you become dismissive. Then you become like, okay, fuck you guys. Like, there's no sympathy for that person. Like, there's no such thing as, or we want to empathy. We want to empathize with you. How are we going to be able to help this situation? And you know, you try and like have somebody cold turkey it, and then that shit don't work.
These are drugs, okay? Just like pharmaceuticals, they're drugs. A lot of time people are using them, and if they're not abusing them, if they're like regularly using them, let's even say it's heroin. I've read stories where schizophrenics take a relief from heroin, like in a microdose type thing, right? Study. Of course, these things are all new because we haven't been able to do any studies on them.
Right.
But so they're all drugs. Like, there's an equivalent-ish in the pharmaceutical industry, okay? And a lot of times people don't have, you know, they don't have insurance, or they don't have the means to, or they're embarrassed about whatever their symptoms are, and they aren't, you know, comfortable because of that judgment thing we just talked about. So a lot of people are just self-medicating something. And yeah, we shouldn't shame them. Like, maybe there's an equivalent in the pharmacy that they can use, but you got to imagine this too. Sometimes the pharmacy equivalent is more addictive and dangerous than what you may find on the street.
Yes.
And then you get a synthetic version of it, you know, that's not tested, when otherwise the street version has been, you know, good to go because it's a plant forever, and we've been, you know, synthesizing it forever, humanity. And
I actually have a question on bringing it back to like trying to regulate it. So say like we ban the bans on drugs and we open it up. Do you think that having a community, so somebody who's like the only person who produces it, is like, okay, well, I saw you, I'll give you this month's worth, or you pay for it, you know, and you get your month's worth and you try and regulate it through that? Do you think that would be a bad idea? Like, or you get like communities where you said you had the opioid community and they did their little thing, but nobody was going out crazy. Do you think that if you had little sectioned off communities where people were able to do them and have their little area, it would be more effective than what it is today?
As long as that happened voluntarily. Like, I mean, if, for instance, like in cities, you got like Little China, Little Italy. Those weren't forced, segregated areas. That's where the community over generations lived. They built that. They love it. Yeah, if it wasn't forced, but I wouldn't want it. You're asking like regulated. Well, that's forced in my eyes. So if they regulated and say, you know, look, you can't open your opium store next to a liquor store, like, that's for the free market to decide, man. I can't get on board with regulating where.
Not necessarily like, oh, you can't be right here. It's more so like, it's the community more open to it. And I'm not saying like people would have to be forced down the pipeline of, oh, you can. I'm trying to just say regulate
like where the culture already exists. You mean?
Yeah,
like,
and then
I think what he's talking about is regulating, like having like a more of a natural regulation of like, hey, look,
of the community.
I'm not selling you this stuff because I know, like, you know, it kind of like when the bartender's like, hey, man, I think you've had a couple too many, you know?
Yeah.
And they're just kind of like, I'm gonna get your, you know, I know your friend, you know, and I'm gonna get your friend to come over here and take your
See,
keys so that you don't get yourself in trouble, that sort of
that should
thing.
be at the
There's more of a
discretion of the business then, and
Right.
if they want to say no, fine. And if that customer wants to walk out and go to another business and get his opium somewhere else, then
Right.
I mean, yeah, same thing. I don't think it should be regulated because people
Right.
have different tolerances for different things. You guys, you're talking about, Nicco, you said that you have this very, ritualistic smoking habit. I'm jealous because, what I deal with, I live with Crohn's, and cannabis puts it in almost full remission. Like it's the only thing. So I smoke all day long. I just all day long to the point where I don't even really get high anymore. I sit down, like suck down a bunch of joints, maybe I can, right? But dude, would I recommend that for anybody else? Hell no. Like a lot of people can't even take one hit, right? So how could you regulate that? How could you tell me that I only need 4 ounces of weed a month? You don't know what I need. You don't know what I'm using it for. I could be making tincture with it. I could be making edibles with it. I could be, and here's what I'm angry about too, is whole plant is for people with GI tract issues to consume the plant, the stalk, butter from the leaves. I'm not talking about the THC, the stalk, the plant matter. That's good for you, like lettuce and stuff. And we're being kept from the holistic benefits of this plant. Like it's affecting everybody's body too. In fact, I read I can't co-sign on regulating cannabis or anything else just for that reason. The tolerance, it's different. It's different for everyone.
No, it truly is.
With your healthcare provider or your substance provider, whatever that person's name is between you and that person that's providing it.
Well, it's more on the communication front of it. So like say like I'd be able to like go in a smoking session with my homies and it like smack 4 woods and be like, oh, I'm all right, because my tolerance is just up there. But when I have that 5th one and then my homies notice I get sick over it, they'd be like, okay, well, he's able to consume the 4, and then when he's able to build his tolerance to the 5th, or just sticks to the 4, because everybody knows their limit when it comes to drinking or smoking. So it's like it is more so self-regulating when it comes to it, but when I was saying with the idea of it being regulated, it's everybody having to understand of the tolerance and understanding of everything that goes around.
Yeah, and same in turn, like I don't believe the consumer should be able to come back and sue the opium or cocaine manufacturer for their being hooked on it. You're responsible. You bought this from me. I'm providing it for you. If it runs your life down a rabbit hole,
you allowed it.
That's on you. But you allowed it. You shouldn't be able to sue those businesses.
Unless it's fraud, where you're putting some other shit in there that is not, where that's a different thing.
It was made wrong, like a talcum powder that's given everybody cancer. Like in cases like that where something is haphazardly released, then you're responsible.
Which is all part of the actual regulation structure, to be honest. Like that's what's driving that shit to begin with. But I think if I can back up Nicco a little bit, I think some of this too is like what we have is a problem of, so I'll raise my hand again as the one who's this is as far I go with that stuff, is the red wine type shit. But it's people like me who have never done this stuff trying to tell people who have what they can and can't tolerate. And that's where the problem is. And so when you bring it more to like a more personal level, where you have like people who know you, they kind of, that's why I brought the thing about the bartender or wherever. It's like, you go into this bar week and they're like, hey man, like I know where you kind of start like point where you're gonna try to fuck somebody you shouldn't be trying to fuck, or you're gonna get hurt by their boyfriend or something like that, or you're gonna end up starting a fight with somebody. I'm gonna just kind of be like your nice friend who's gonna say, hey, I think if you want to get that, you need to go somewhere else. I can't give you that because I care enough about you to not do that, to not put you in that situation. I think it's more along the, if I'm not putting words in your mouth, Nicco, that's what it seemed like.
Yeah, no, it's like a more cordial understanding business and because like my plug, he's like my brother, so it's like he knows what he knows what I come and grab. And it's like even via due to money, and I can go and grab a certain amount, like he knows me. And I mean, I don't wow out So it's like I don't go jumping from different drugs and all that. So like he knows where my tolerance is, and like he so like for example, he would be that person that's selling it to you would also be smoking with you later on that night. So he talks to you about it. Everybody, like I said, it's community based thing. So you got that one guy in town everybody goes to, and he's like, oh yeah, here you go. That's your amount. Cool. So it's like everybody knows the amount that they're gonna grab. They know where they're gonna do it. Everybody plans out for the most part these settings.
Instead of a one-size-fits-all government
Right.
regulated,
Yeah,
like
like I'm
top-down,
not
you know.
yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna come down and be like, oh yeah, you can't do this. Like it's more so of, hey, you know how you are. It's somebody who's
Precautionary.
somebody who's able to basically let you know about yourself,
You know,
reminding you about yourself, basically.
I've said one time too, and I was forced off of weed or intimidated off of weed onto pharmaceuticals by a custody court, and they were awful, right? They were disgusting. They wreaked havoc, and I realized in that moment, because okay, this doctor gave me Adderall and Klonopin at the same time, and she goes, "Sweetheart, great together. These go great together." No experience with this stuff. I have no idea. Once I got through this roller coaster and look back, I'm like, yo, when I was speedballing at the raves in the 90s, my friends were like, bro, settle down. They took better care of me, okay, and got me to stop using whatever it was if I was going over my limit, and they made sure I got home. You know, they cared more about my safety than this doctor that kept just handing me prescriptions like he was throwing ones on a stage. And that's like a weird dynamic to realize that, wait a minute, your friends that you were breaking the law with, you know, when you guys were out having fun with each other and experimenting with things and taking care of each other and not hurting anybody, but you were being bad.
Mind your business.
Yeah, that's and the people who are supposed to take care of you, and it's because of money, and it's not all doctors, but the people who you're told are supposed to take care of you, they care less than these criminals and drug addicts that you were told to stay away from your whole life. What a shame is that? I mean, how that's a bad state of affairs, you know. That's the reality.
It is sad. Oh, go ahead.
Two things have come up in this conversation that I was reminded of. One of those, over and over again, kept hearing, and I'm going to butcher the quote, but I'm going to do the best that I can. Ludwig von Mises said, "Only the individual acts, only the individual chooses," and that's the way it is. No matter what you do, no matter how you do it, it is the individual that makes these choices. And and only the individual knows how much they can take of one thing or another. Only the individual knows that. And so that's the first part. The second part is cooperation is greater than coercion. No matter what you do, no matter how you do it, if you are cooperating with your community, if you're cooperating with your friend circle, whatever your community is, if you're cooperating, they will work with you and figure out what the hell you need and what the hell you don't need. And they will advise you and help you. When you put it in the hands of somebody that is going to force you and coerce you and make you do something, you will automatically rebel. I'm an anti-authoritarian. I've been an anti-authoritarian all my life. And the moment somebody said, everybody's doing cigarettes, I said, okay, well, then I guess that means I'm not. I have never smoked a cigarette in my life. So you know, it is what it is. And at the end of the day, we have to trust people to make the right choices. And you say, well, that's what we need government for. And no, government is people. And if you cannot trust people to make their own decisions, how the fuck can you put a whole bunch of power in their hands and expect them to make the right choices?
How can you expect them to make the right decisions for other people? That's what that's what you're doing. You're saying you can't make decisions for yourself, but what you can do is make decisions for everyone. It goes back to the Bastiat quote where he talks about, I won't quote it, but I'll paraphrase. Like he says, like, if you can't trust these people to rule themselves, how can you trust them to vote?
Yeah.
Well, you just coerce them through fear and violence. That's duh. That's
Right. Right.
it's
Exactly.
quite simple. You threaten them, with
Right.
silence, and it's
So
just a
guys,
sad.
this has been really
Yeah, this is
fun.
great.
Nicco, do you want to get into any history this week, or?
If my thing allows me to, I accidentally. So you see, I'm not tilted. I have a new laptop. Haha. But I kind of signed myself out of my my Google thing, and I don't remember if it has the saved history. Ah, But I actually, instead of history, I have something else pulled up.
Okay.
And it's
I don't.
basically.
Go ahead, Mary.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't want to interrupt you guys, but I'm a half hour late for a call because
Right
John
on.
got
Go
it.
ahead. Do your thing. Do your thing.
All right. Thanks for joining
Hey,
us.
thank you so
Joey,
much for coming
and,
on. This was awesome.
Yeah, it's been great having you. We should have the links up tomorrow. I will send you a message when everything's done on Telegram. Thanks for coming. And everybody check her out. And I believe it was platoon420.com.
Yes, sir. That's it.
And
All the information is there. So, and Nicco, I'm sorry to have interrupted you, and I'm
Oh
looking
no, no
forward
worries.
to
It was a
whatever it
pleasure
is you have
talking to
say
you.
once it airs. So,
It was
Thank you, Joey. Thank you for coming on, Joey. We really
yeah,
appreciate it.
anytime.
All
We'll
right.
definitely do it again.
actually, Joey, I'm going to be actually hitting you up soon because
Cool.
I'm very interested since I'm a hothead.
Yeah. Marcus, throw my information if you want, or you can find me on Facebook or at platoon420.com.
I'll
All right,
most
guys.
definitely check you out. All right.
All right. Peace
All
and love,
right.
y'all.
So I do have history, but it's not in depth. So I'm just going to run down a little timeline.
Great.
In 1794, terror is nothing more than speedy, served, and inflexible justice. Severe, my bad. And Robespierre, one of the leading figures of the French Revolution, was sent to the guillotine. In 1540, King Henry, what is that? V111? That's 15?
Yeah, that's the 8th. Yeah.
The 8th,
I'm
my
Henry
bad.
the 8th.
Oof.
I am. That guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
King Henry of VIII of England, Chief Minister Thomas Cromwell was executed, and Harry married his 5th wife. Oof.
Hey, sometimes it'd be like that, man. ask David and Bathsheba, right? Where he sent Bathsheba's husband off to get killed in the war so he could have her.
Damn. In 1750, Johann Sebastian Bach died. 1821, Peru declares its independence from Spain. In 1868, the 14th Amendment of the Constitution was established. The citizenship of African Americans and guaranteed due process of law was ratified. In 1914, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, participating in the start of World War I. 1932, Herbert Hoover ordered Douglas MacArthur to evict the bonus marchers for their camp. What is this?
That is, I actually know this one. That is, yeah. What basically the bonus army was, is it was right outside of, this is after World War I. They were told that they were going to get all of this money, and that was part of their contract to go fight in World War I. Well, the government, in its purest loveliness, said, "Fuck you, we're not going to give you shit." So these people camped out. These veterans camped out outside of Washington D.C. in a big ass crowd, pissed, and were demanding their money. This is actually, and I know Chad's familiar with Smedley Butler, General Smedley Butler, who was who is the most decorated Marine in history.
Also wrote the book "War is a Racket."
Right, which was based, that book, which is excellent, and it made him a hero to the anti-war movement that would eventually come. But the speech that he gave to the bonus army was the first draft of what would become War is a Racket. But the United States government wound up gassing its own troops on American soil, and that happened to disperse that army.
Yeah, I was going to say, it had a very Ludlow massacre feel to it. I don't know if
You know,
you're
whenever
familiar with
there's
the
a
Ludlow
sit-in,
massacre.
there's a massacre.
The Ludlow massacre?
Say that again?
Are y'all familiar with the Ludlow massacre?
I'm not.
Yeah, I think you've mentioned
So this is in Colorado.
Yeah.
There was a coal mine. You had these people. So it was a coal mine where you had like coal mine barracks basically for the coal miners and their families. They had housing on site on the coal mine property, and like a general store. So when you were paid in shit that you could buy from the general store. You know, so that was pretty much it. It was basically slavery.
Yeah.
And the miners demanded they were like, the conditions are terrible. You're not paying us enough. Like, we're not getting enough. Like, this is slavery. It's ridiculous. You've got to do better. And they said, no, we're not. And they said, fine, then we're not working anymore. They said, fine, then get the fuck out. You can't live here anymore. And they said, fine. And, you know, so it's like this boom, 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 chain reaction. They went and set up a tent community. And I don't remember the exact name of the military unit that was brought in, but it was like effectively like a National Guard type unit that was brought in. So you had the coal mine company, which the name escapes me. I'll have to look it up. But anyway, the coal mine company combined with U.S. military went in and machine gunned the tent community, killing 21 people.
Yep, that sounds like big old government force.
Yep, that's it.
Well, it's that great private public partnership, right?
Right.
Of the government and the coal mining company, where it's like, this is great. It's like backwards socialism. You know, it's still socialism, but it's like the corporation has seized the means of government, and the government has also seized the means of production. You know. Yeah, exactly. It's like they said, hey, I have an idea. They know that socialism is when the government seizes the means of production. What we'll do is we'll just seize the means of the government. It's the same thing.
Right.
Like the same people are still in charge, but it'll just be different so that like all the Antifa people can say like, no, this isn't socialism. This is something else. And they'll kind of be right, but they'll also kind of be like, trying to replace it with the same shit that got us in the shit in the first place.
Speaking of coal miners, this last one in 2002, it was 7 coal miners were trapped, in Pennsylvania, 9 coal miners were trapped after 77 hours of being trapped.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember that.
Awesome.
Cool. That was quite the odyssey.
Guys, this was a fun one. I've got to get going myself because my wife has an appointment tomorrow. Speaking of this week, though, in history, in July 31st, this coming Friday, I'm going to neglect to say how long ago the most wonderful female who has ever existed came into existence. My wife's birthday is Friday, so.
Hey.
Yeah.
Happy
Shout
birthday.
out to Amber.
Blessings.
Happy birthday in advance.
Yep. Right. And
love.
so I think that this is a good place to end this. And guys, this was a good one. I enjoyed talking to Joey. I think that she didn't know what to expect and didn't know that she's going to be drugged down so many twists and turns, but welcome to Aquarian Anarchy.
I think she enjoyed it. She stayed on like an hour past when we were trying to let her go.
Yeah, no, she most definitely liked those bunny holes.
Right.
Yeah, I think it was good. I'm going to go try to not get suspended from Twitter tonight.
Right. Well, thanks again, everyone who's made it this far into the video. And again, we got a bunch of new products in the store. I strongly suggest you go check it out. Just for Chad's benefit. There's a Basquiat quote in there. It's not your favorite
Hey,
quote.
I dug a little bit today, but I didn't get to that one.
Yeah.
I did bring my Veto shirt. I had it over there. I just didn't. I'm not wearing it tonight. I'm gonna wear that in the airport on my way out. I always wear something controversial in the airport.
You got to,
just so that I can get those looks.
I do think
when I go through the airport. I love it.
Yeah, but please go check out our store. Check out Joey's site again. That is platoon420.com. And thank you very much for taking the time, and stay free, my friends.
Peace.